couple of things at the top. I think you've seen that today we released a report identifying North Korean officials and entities responsible for or associated with serious human rights abuses or censorship. You've also seen my statement on this, or at least I hope you have, and the report in the annex, of course, can be found on our website. In conjunction with the report, the Department of the Treasury has added North Korea persons, including Kim Jong Un, to the specially designated nationals and blocked persons list. Both actions are consistent with the requirements of the North Korean Sanctions and Policy Enhancement Act of 2016. Human rights abuses in the DPRK are among the worst in the world. The government continues to commit extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, arbitrary arrest and detention, forced labor, and torture. Many of these abuses are committed in political prison camps, where an estimated 80 to 120,000 individuals are detained, including children and the family members of accused. This report is the first listing of persons determined to be responsible for serious human rights abuses and censorship in the DPRK as required by the Act. We're going to continue to identify more individuals as we obtain additional information. Now, as you, I think, can understand, obtaining information about these kinds of issues in the DPRK is not easy, especially obtaining the identities of officials below the very top leadership. It's very difficult given the closed nature of the DPRK. But in fact, this report represents the most comprehensive U.S. government effort to date to actually name specific officials responsible for or associated with the worst aspects of this regime's brutal repression of its own people. Brad.
Realize a lot's going on, so I'll be fast. First on North Korea, do you actually think that these sanctions will improve human rights or censorship in North Korea?
Well, we certainly would like to see the situation in North Korea improve with respect to human rights, obviously. And if we weren't concerned about that, and if we didn't want to see the situation improve, we wouldn't have been pursuing this in concert with the Congress for so long. So we certainly hope that that's the outcome. Only the regime's leadership can honestly answer that question about whether they are fully committed to it or not. This isn't just symbolic. This identification of these individuals, it really for the first time puts them out in the public domain in a way that they haven't been necessarily before, and it could have repercussions not just from a U.S. perspective, because now other nations. In terms of these sanctions, other nations will probably, and other institutions will probably think twice. Wow. And so there could be, quite frankly, there could be global financial implications for some of these individuals.
I mean, given that Kim Jong Un and his top aides aren't visiting the U.S. or signing cell phone contracts with American companies or investing in American hedge funds that I know of, what is it? Is it mainly then a provocation? And then you spoke about other countries could take the. I mean, what countries? Which countries would be okay with North Korea testing ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons, but then would follow the lead on a censorship restriction sanction?
Well, look, I
mean, it's a bit strange to.
No. I think. Look, I don't know the extent to which there are U.S. economic assets here at play. I suspect you're probably right that that if there are any, there's not many of them. But this will have. Hang on a second. Hang on, please. But and I can't speak for every nation or every banking institution around the world. All I can say is that when we do this, when we put somebody on a special designation list like this, it does reverberate around the world, and it can have an impact on the way other countries or other international bodies and financial institutions consider doing business. I don't have the full scope of the business activities globally or regionally of all the individuals. I'm just saying that there can be, as a result of this, a real financial cost to this. There is also, though, a power that exists in naming them. Naming them is difficult to do. As I said, it's a closed society. It's opaque. We don't have a lot of visibility. A lot of work went into doing the best we could to name these additional officials in concert with the jobs we know they do there and the impact that they're having on their own people. So there's a real power there too. Is there a message here as well? Is there a messaging component to this? Absolutely, there is. But we believe that that it still could have an impact on them. Now, whether it'll have a dramatic impact on Kim Jong Un and his decisions, I can't say. This is clearly a leader who has resisted many international efforts to curb his provocative behavior and to get him to make the kinds of responsible decisions that he should be making on behalf of his people. But that doesn't mean that this still isn't the right thing to do, and it doesn't mean that it's still not the right thing for us to continue to pursue. As I think I made clear, we're going to continue to look at this going forward.
Don't you think, just to follow on Brad's point, I mean, don't you think this could have the opposite intended effect, that like this will just provoke the regime into more provocative behavior, more antics, more, if history serves us well, anytime you take an action against North Korea of this nature, it will be, North Korea's neighbors, perhaps the United States, and even the North Korean people that could suffer further as a result.
Well, look, I can't predict what Kim Jong Un's going to do as a result of this or any other action by our government or governments around the world. But this is yet another opportunity for him to try to make the right decisions.
Right, but he's never taken any of those opportunities, and in fact has done the exact opposite. And can I finish? I understand that it's an important symbolic gesture that, in your eyes, raises attention to the human rights abuses well documented by the regime. But I'm just wondering if you've given consideration to the fact that it could have an unintended negative consequences.
We think through as many circumstances as possible whenever we make these kinds of decisions. At least these are done, obviously, with careful deliberation. But it would send absolutely the wrong message to him. And could embolden him to continue these depravities on his own people if you just sit by quietly and say nothing and do nothing and sanction nothing.
I didn't say say nothing and do nothing, but given the fact that the regime is already sanctioned to the hilt, I'm not necessarily sure what actual practical effect that these sanctions have, except for their symbolic value.
Well, let's see. We just announced them. Let's see how it goes.